What is going on, Pure Fight Radio fanatics? For those of you who are out there, and if you are not out there, we hope to create you very soon. We are bringing back Pure Fight Radio, and this time I'm here with my good friend, Tim Koskuba. How's it going tonight, Tim?
It's good to be back, Internet. It's been a while since I've been out here talking MMA. Hopefully some fans from my past will join me on this future venture. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well, my friend. Thank you for asking. And it's great to hear your voice back in the MMA stream of content that is posted on the internet. And, you know, we're very excited to break down. We're going to, of course, break down some UFC 216 action, which is taking place this Saturday night from the T-Mobile Arena in Paradise, Nevada. Of course, our main event of the evening is Tony Ferguson versus Kevin Lee for the Interim Lightweight Championship. The co-main event of the evening will be between the Mighty Mouse Demetrious Johnson taking on Ray Borg for the UFC Flyweight Championship, and Demetrious Johnson is looking to make history and break Anderson Silva's current consecutive title defense record at 10. He's looking to break that with 11 straight title defenses. We'll see if he can manage to do that. Also on the main card, there's a solid heavyweight scrap between Fabricio Verdum and Derek Lewis. There's a few other quality fights on this thing. What do you think about the rest of the card, Tim?
Yeah, it's not loaded with name value necessarily, but a lot of fun matchups here. You know, you got some lighter weight classes, you got some prospects. Obviously, the two title fights with Demetrious Johnson and Ray Borg being rescheduled from UFC 215. It got a nice little swap over to kick this card up a notch. This card, in terms of the main event, was kind of put together last minute because they didn't really have a big fight lined up. And with Conor McGregor's boxing endeavors, they put this together. And Khabib Nurmagomedov's injuries as well. They put these two guys together, and it should be fun. It should be a fun night.
I 100% agree, and I'm very excited for this card. It's kind of it's taken a minute to hit because of basically, you know, I feel like they've kind of neglected to promote this to a degree. I think this week they're amping up promotion just a little bit more than usual. Hopefully this will do solid numbers on pay-per-view. But I don't think it will do that great, in all honesty. I mean, in all honesty, Tony Ferguson doesn't even have like 100,000 Twitter followers, and Kevin Lee is just kind of breaking out just into the MMA mainstream. You know, it's going to be a while before either of them really break into the whole like mainstream aspect of sports fans. I think the winner, while it took them a while to make this main event, I'm kind of happy that it is, because I believe they're trying to give the winner of this like that type of platform, so they will be sort of marketable against Conor McGregor for the actual championship, because the UFC doesn't seem to do anything with integrity nowadays or merit. They just seem to say, okay, this guy's got a name going, this guy's got a buzz, let's give him a title shot. And so I'm happy that they're at least, giving these guys that type of platform. It is kind of disappointing to not see them push the Demetrious Johnson fight, just because, I mean, this is a pretty big milestone, and while, you can make an argument that Demetrious hasn't faced a level of competition as a GSP or an Anderson Silva or a John Jones, he's about to break Anderson Silva's title defense record, and that's a pretty big milestone if we're talking about sports. When you compare the UFC to other sporting organizations like the NFL or anything, when Peyton Manning broke the touchdown record for the single season, I mean, it was a huge deal. I mean, it was a huge deal for the NFL, a huge deal for the sport in general, and I just feel like the UFC is kind of undermining Demetrious Johnson's milestone here.
I think a little bit of that has to do with timing. Like, they put a lot of promotion into, well, not a lot, but more than this into 215, and then that kind of fell apart, days before the fight.
Yeah.
So they might not have wanted to ramp it up a second time just for redundancy purposes, and like to kind of oversaturate the marketing aspect of this fight. So I think that more has to do with the cancellation and rescheduling of the fight more so than anything. If they had this planned out from the beginning, I think we would have seen DJ on the sports centers and doing the media push and such. And it's no secret that him and Dana aren't exactly BFFs. They're not
Right.
sending each other Christmas cards at this point. So, you know,
No, I agree, and I mean Ray Borg is not a reliable fighter like at all. I mean he's missed weight a couple times. He's pulled out of fights like two or three different times. I mean he just pulled out in the main event a couple days. I think on this day actually it was a Wednesday or a Thursday where he pulled out of the main event for UFC 215. So definitely need to keep our eyes open for this fight. Apparently he fired his nutritionist, but is cutting weight the same as last time. So not sure how that's going to play out. Come
yeah, knock on wood that this doesn't get rescheduled again until UFC 217.
knock on wood that anything like doesn't happen pre-fight, because I just feel like this year has been plagued. Like every fight, I feel like this year has been plagued to a certain degree. Like there's just some sort of controversy heading into every single fight and after every single fight. Like there's just some sort of controversy somewhere.
For sure. Every time there's a card that I get genuinely excited about, I try to temper that expectation, knowing that something is probably going to go wrong. And that's just the unpredictability of MMA, really. Like in preparation for the fight, like these guys are using so many different parts of their bodies, different muscles, different bones. So many things can go wrong that it's hard to like look out months in advance and see something like Ngannou Overeem that just got announced, or Rivera and Dominic Cruz, like awesome fights, but I'm just gonna wait until they actually weigh in and step into the octagon before I get actually excited.
Yeah, you can't even get excited now after they weigh in because I mean the next day they might pull out. I mean you saw
Yeah, they
um,
might hit their head on a pipe like Ken Shamrock.
you could have that case, or you can have like a an instance like at UFC 213 with Amanda Nunes, where she made weight and everything, and then she had the whole
Just
sinus
disappear.
infection, just basically disappeared the day before. I mean, not the day before, the day of the fight. So, I mean, you can't count on these guys to make it to the cage anymore. Even, I mean, it's a rarity nowadays to have, a fight card like UFC 205 come together where I mean they've got it stacked to the max and everyone makes it with no injuries. I mean, it's a big rarity to see that nowadays. So, I mean, even for a fight card like this to get excited, I mean, that could be one of the reasons why the UFC isn't, hasn't had the best year this year, because everyone just it seems like everyone's getting excited for these big fights they're putting on, and then all of a sudden something happens at the last minute, and then it's almost like when the next card comes along, it's like, well, I don't even want to get excited anymore because I don't know if this fight's actually going to take place or not. So it's
Right.
just it sucks, but it is what it is. It's a sport of mixed martial arts, and it's been like this since the get go. More so, I think it's just kind of bad luck recently than anything else. But I'm excited for this card. Like you said, while their star power definitely isn't there. There's definitely a lot of good matchups on this thing, and there's a lot of solid prospects on this undercard as well. And even on the main card, there's some very good fights. Like I said, not anything superstar power worthy, not anything that's going to drive them to probably even like 500K pay-per-view buys or anything like that.
I'd
But
be surprised if it broke 200, honestly.
I would too. Probably. I would assume it's going to be kind of numbers almost to a kind of similar to UFC like 213ish or something. Maybe not that bad, but somewhere around there between like 150 and 200K pay-per-view buys. That's probably where it's going to be around. But yeah, I'm excited for the fights. Do you want to start from the bottom of the card and work our way up, or would you like to start from the top and work our way down?
Uh, let's go Mike Zombie and start from the bottom, and then we there. Um, Although there's some stuff that is not really worth talking about, in my opinion. Like we don't really need to dive too deep into Walt Harris versus Mark Godbeer.
Not at all.
They're two heavyweights. One of them's gonna hit the other one in the face, and hopefully the other one goes down because God forbid we watch 15 minutes of that.
I
Uh,
swear, a mixed martial arts heavyweight fight is either a first round knockout or a boring 3 rounds. That's about it.
yeah, like if you're there live and it hits that first bell, just probably just go and get yourself some refreshments.
There are few fights where I would, a few heavyweight fights where I would genuinely enjoy like a 5-round showcase. Very few. I mean, there's like maybe 5 different fighters I would like to see fight throughout like a 5-round period. Like a Stipe Miocic versus Cain Velasquez. I mean, that if that thing goes 5 rounds, that thing will be a great fight. But
sure.
when you look at, like you said, Walt Harris and Mark Godbeer, or even, I mean, honestly, if Fabricio Verdum and Derek Lewis goes a full 3 rounds, it could end up being a little ugly towards the end. So
yeah. That's for sure. So we can skip that. Unless you have some real deep thoughts on Pro Gonzalez versus Poliana Botello. I'm not really interested in that. I mean, the 2 ladies might scrap it out, but I feel like it's just kind of there.
Yeah, I mean, everything on the Fight Pass card is. I mean, even Talis ladies and Brad Tavares. I'm not very excited about that. It's going to be a decent fight. Decent middleweight bout and some names that are kind of relevant, but
it's not some name value.
Yeah, I mean,
these guys have been around forever. I can't believe they actually haven't fought yet.
Yeah, I'm pretty surprised by that too. But it's 2017, so both of these guys are virtually out of any type of. Talis latest fought for the title back in, what was it, like 2009 or something? I think it was.
Man, that was a long time ago. It was in my YouTube heyday.
Oh man, that was in my. I was like right before I started my YouTube heyday as well. So. Talis Laitis is. Well, I mean, he had almost like a little period where he kind of got back in the mix and he was fighting like the Michael Bispings and everything, but quietly went back down the drain.
Yeah, he actually won like 5 straight coming back into the UFC in 2013, I want to say. And then he had the decision against Bisping, which he lost pretty clearly. Did okay, and wasn't awesome. Lost to Gegard Mousasi, no real shame in that. No. And then lost that decision to Krzysztof Joko. I mean, none of those are bad losses necessarily, but it's not like he was really competitive in any of them. So he's got to win a couple more fights like this, and then he'll, probably get showcased against like an up-and-coming prospect, and UFC will cut its ties.
Probably. Something like that. So, so that Fight Pass undercard is pretty non-existent. I'm not really too interested in that.
The only thing I think worth talking about, honestly, is Magomed Bibulatov versus John Moraga.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, John Moraga, we know he challenged Demetrious Johnson. He's been in the flyweight top 10 now for quite a while. Has fought kind of a who's who down there. Joseph Benavidez, John Dotson, obviously DJ, Dustin Ortiz, Chris Carriazo, made his debut against Luis Gomez. So Sergio Pettis also. He's hit a little bit of a skid. He lost 3 in a row before rebounding in his last fight against a guy that probably didn't belong to be in there with him. He's taken on Bibulatov, was the World Series of Fighting flyweight champion, I believe. Has a lot of hype around him, well-rounded guy. This is a pretty big, they clearly have plans for him because he's debuting against a pretty well-known guy, top 10, 15 guy at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious to see how it plays out. If I were to pick, I'd probably go Bibulatov just because I think he's a little more well-rounded. He can kind of dictate where the fight goes with his wrestling. Probably a better pure stand-up fighter. Although Moraga does have some pretty good power for a flyweight, especially in his right hand. So unless he lands like a big shot or Bibulatov dives lazily into a guillotine, which I can actually probably see as Moraga's best way of winning, I expect Bibulatov to win. Although if good people prevail, John Moraga will win. Not that I know a whole lot about him, but considering Magomed Bibulatov is like a lackey for some Chechnyan warlord, I'll be rooting for John Moraga.
God, Jesus. I mean, I pretty much agree with everything you said. I gotta go. I'm gonna go with Bibulatov in this one. John Moraga is kind of, like you said, he's been on that skid recently. Hasn't looked that great of late, and it seems like Bibulatov that does have. I mean, he's undefeated, and like you said, former World Series of Fighting champ. I think he is more so on the upside of his career compared to John Moraga, who's more so on the downside. So I will definitely go with Bibulatov in this fight as well. So that's pretty much the Fight Pass card we're going to cover. We've got 3 pretty decently interesting fights on the FXX card that we could talk about. Obviously, Pearl Gonzalez, that fight is, I'm not really, too concerned about going too in depth about that, but Bobby Green versus Lando Venata is a good lightweight scrap, I would say. Lando Venata always seems to, bring the heat in every fight, bring the excitement. And Bobby Green's just kind of that, he seems to almost be the lightweight gatekeeper at this point, maybe even a little below that. He's a solid fighter, but I just feel like it's almost like he doesn't, it almost feels like he just doesn't try when it comes to fighting. He comes in there, he talks a bunch of trash to his opponents, he tries to get in their head. Sometimes he'll win like a really narrow split decision, something that he probably doesn't deserve, and that actually, kind of happened quite a bit in the UFC. He was on like a solid 10, almost 10 fight win streak at some point. And then he ran into Edson Barboza, Dustin Poirier, and he lost his last fight as well. And he's just, I think Bobby Green's just kind of going to be I wouldn't go to the extent of saying he's a punching bag for Lando Venata, but Lando Venata is going to be a lot more skilled on the feet, while Bobby Green has the experience. I would definitely, Venata's far more talented, far more diverse on the feet. He's going to have just a barrage of different techniques on the feet. Unless Bobby Green tries to drag this thing to the ground and somehow win a decision, I think Lando Venata is probably going to end up finishing Bobby Green within like the first 2 rounds.
Yeah, I'm with you in terms of the pick. I like Venata to win. Bobby Green has had one of the more bizarre careers in MMA. Like he burst on this. That's probably not the best phrase.
Burst. He eventually arrived on the scene.
He came on the scene, at least the first time I saw him fight, and probably most of the MMA world, was when he fought Dan Lozon on Affliction and got kicked in the nuts like 100 times.
Ugh. Wow,
ended up getting
Dan
choked
Lozon,
out later on.
Wow, that's a old name. Holy
this
crap.
was back in the day. He came back to prominence a little bit later on in King of the Cage. That's where I, noticed him again. I was like, oh yeah, hey, that's that dude that has like 1.5 nuts, courtesy of Dan Lozon. And then he moved into Strikeforce, had some success there. That's where he started his win streak that you mentioned earlier. Moved that into the UFC. Actually beat Josh Thompson, which was a big upset at the time. And kind of people thought that Bobby Green had kind of arrived at that point. It's like, okay, this dude has kind of figured it out. And you saw the talent before, but at that point it was like, okay, well, he's realized his talent. He's going to be a top 10 guy. And those subsequent losses quickly dispelled that myth. So, I think he's still a UFC caliber fighter. I just don't think he's a top 10, lightweight. I think he'll kind of be a win one, lose one kind of guy. Unless
you can make an argument he's maybe like top 15.
Yeah, potentially. On his best day, he can beat a lot of guys. But I think really in terms of X's and O's, this fight comes down to who has the better fight IQ in the fight. Because I've seen Lando Venata fight quite a few times now, and he's got a lot of talent, obviously. Rocked Tony Ferguson quite a few times and as a last-minute replacement. And that dude's, a favorite now to win the UFC Lightweight Title. So in his subsequent fights, obviously, he had a hell of a knockout against John McDessie, probably the knockout of the year last year. And against David Tamer in his last fight, I thought he would win. He just, I don't know, he didn't have the best strategy going in. I felt like he kind of fought into Tamer's hands.
I agree.
And if he does that against Bobby Green, a guy who's probably a better wrestler and a better grappler than he is, and he just ends up like getting caught up against the fence or getting in kind of an up and down kind of fight, then he's going to lose. So I think he's got to kind of keep this at distance, counter, and land a big shot. I think he will. There's definitely room for Bobby Green to get a win here. So I'll go with Venata, but it's a fun lightweight fight. Interesting matchup here by Mr. Sean Shelby.
Yes, absolutely. It is a very good fight. And it will be interesting. It really does kind of depend on how Lando shows up and what his game plan is going to be, because it did seem he got a little careless against David Tamer, and I mean we saw what happened in that fight. I mean David Tamer was just outstriking him the whole fight. It was really interesting to see because Lando's known for his striking and his kind of advanced techniques that he brings to the table on the feet. And we just saw David Tamer bring nothing like special on the feet. I mean, he was just better.
He just fought smarter.
Yeah, he just outpointed him, and he fought smarter, like you said. And Lando was just kind of trying to do the flashy stuff, and maybe he underestimated David Tamer. I'm not really sure, but it just seemed that was the case, and he fought careless, and he paid the price for that. And if he does that against a veteran like Bobby Green, he will pay the price once again. But if Lando fights up to his capabilities, and I believe he's with Greg Jackson. Is that correct?
Bobby Green.
No. Lando Venata. I think he just joined Jackson Wink.
That's what it says on his Fight Finder page, anyway.
Yeah. So I mean, like I would assume that they've kind of straightened him out since that loss. So I think he will come with a more established game plan, and hopefully he will follow it to a T this time. Because I mean, Lando's got a ton of potential as well. So I would like to see him fulfill that potential.
He's only 25. I didn't realize that. I thought he was a little older.
It's crazy how competitive he was early against Tony Ferguson too, and a super entertaining fighter Lando Venata is. I would like to see him kind of shoot up in the lightweight rankings. So hopefully he can fill up to his.
This was actually supposed to be Venata and Abel Trujillo. For whatever reason, that didn't come together. But
interesting.
That would have been a fun striking battle.
Yeah, that would have.
Power versus technique, sort of.
Absolutely, but yeah, I mean, like you said, if Venata comes up to this fight and he's he's prepared and follows an actual game plan and doesn't get careless, I think it's all his fight. But
Agreed.
that will be it for that fight. Let's move on to the Will Brooks versus Nick Lentz fight. How do you see that one playing out?
Another pretty fun fight. Will Brooks, I just feel like he's gotten kind of unlucky in his last couple fights, unless he just has a kind of a weakness for fighting Brazilian guys with the first name Oliveira, or last name Oliveira, I should say. Alex, I think, showed up like really overweight in that fight, and he still took it. And he's kind of a naturally big guy anyway. So it might not have been the smartest idea, honestly, considering it was the second UFC fight, and there was, I don't want to say there was plans for him to like break into the top 10, but they signed him to a pretty good deal, and I'm sure he and the UFC expected him to work his way up the ranks and eventually kind of be in title contention as a former Bellator champ. So taking that fight was risky, and it ended up not paying off. And then I just think he got a little desperate against Charles Oliveira because of that loss, and he ended up getting tapped. So this is, I think, kind of a must-win for him. And I think it's a good style matchup. Like, Nick Lentz is a smaller lightweight. He's solid in the stand-up, but we know he's mostly just a grinder. But Will Brooks is a really good wrestler himself. I don't expect him to get grinded, for lack of a better term. So
he shouldn't. There's no way he should against Nick Lentz. I mean, like you said, former Bellator lightweight champ.
Right.
The guy defeated Michael Chandler twice. I mean, it just does seem like he's kind of gotten unlucky, and I've been rooting for Will Brooks since he got into the UFC too, and it's unfortunate that this is he's kind of gone down this route, because I think, like you said, I think the UFC did have good plans for him, especially to fit right in that top 10 of the lightweight division. I mean, like former Bellator champ, there's no reason why he shouldn't. Only had one loss heading into the UFC, and he's dropped his last two after beating Ross Pearson. So this is definitely a must-win, but I do think this is definitely a fight where it's more than winnable for Will Brooks, and if he doesn't win this one, then you got to start really being worried about him.
For sure, and it's a fight he should win. I mean, he's a better striker than Nick Lentz. I think he's got a longer reach. so that should play a factor. He should just be able to kind of circle around and pick his shots, and he's a good enough defensive wrestler to avoid, the Nick Lentz game plan. So I think it's a well matched fight in terms of skill level, but stylistically, it definitely favors Will Brooks, and it's going to be a good launching point for his second run in the UFC, so to speak.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think Will Brooks is going to take this one. He should take it fairly easily. But I mean, it all depends on where his head's at too. I mean, he's lost 2 in a row. I'm not sure where that psyche is going to be at, but hopefully it's in the right place. And Will Brooks' talent against Nick Lentz's talent, it's really a no-brainer. I mean, Will Brooks should be able to stuff takedowns, keep the fight on the feet, and outpoint Nick Lentz and maybe look to finish him at some point. But I mean, you never know. You really just never know. Will Brooks could be very much frustrated heading into this fight and could just fight on emotion and might get out wrestled. I mean, who knows? I seriously doubt it, but I mean, you never know. With that being said, Will Brooks should definitely take this fight. I definitely think a decision is en route to him, if not a decision, possibly a late finish for Will Brooks. All right, so the last fight on the FXX card, we've got huge prospect at bantamweight, Tom Duquesnoy against Cody Stamann. Who do you see winning this one?
Another good fight. I think they like both these guys, honestly. I think you got two prospects that you could definitely promote going forward, depending on who wins this one. So I'm not a huge fan of the prospect versus prospect matchup necessarily.
I'm not either.
Because I feel like, especially with how thick the UFC rosters are, like there's a ladder of different styles you can put against guys and sprinkle in some veterans with some younger guys and have them work on different aspects of their game and just get to be better fighters. This one, it seems like you're kind of killing one of the two. I'm actually, I don't know. I've gone back and forth on this one quite a bit. I think it's the classic striker versus grappler, and it's just a matter of like who you have more confidence in. And more often than not, I feel like I'm going to go with the tough wrestler in that kind of matchup. So I don't know what the odds are on this one, but I assume that Duquesnoy, I butchered that name. You said it much better than I will.
It's Duquesnoy, I think.
All right, cool. Let's go with that. Regardless, I think I'm going to go with Cody Stamann.
Okay.
I feel safer in that pick. I could just see the European guy getting out wrestled. I mean, we've seen how many times have we seen that in MMA? Although you never know. Like, I don't think Stamann's chin has really been tested against a guy with the striking capabilities of Duquesnoy. There you go. I got it. So I'll go with Mr. Wonderful, and I feel like he needs to change his nickname because we already have a Mr. Wonderful in MMA.
We already have a Phil Davis. Yes, we do. We do not need another one. As much as I like Phil Davis, as much as I like Phil Davis as a fighter, unfortunately he hasn't put on the best, most exciting performances in his life. But anyway, we're not talking about Phil Davis. We're talking about this fight.
He has great taste in movies, though.
Great taste in movies. Tom Duquesnoy is. I mean, both of these guys are really good prospects. I think Tom Duquesnoy is definitely the. I think the UFC is looking more towards him in the future, just because he does bring that more exciting type of style. I mean, the guy finishes most of his fights. He's only gone to a decision a few different times, and he's super young, only 24 years old, which is crazy. And this guy was the Bama Bantamweight champion and defended that championship quite a few different times. And I mean, just violently destroyed guys in Bama and destroyed Patrick Williams in his last fight. Didn't look very good early on in the fight, but definitely got more comfortable as it went on. This could be a situation where the grappler does take advantage of the Europeans' takedown defense and just exploit that throughout the whole fight. And this definitely could be one of those cases. What this kind of reminds me of is Mark Jacasey's fight against Drakkar Klose, where Mark Jacasey was super hyped up. This dynamic striker who's just knocking dudes out left and right. And I mean, Drakkar Klose didn't even really out grapple him or anything. He kind of just outpointed him on the feet throughout the fight and got a few takedowns here and there. But Cody Stamann could definitely do that and derail the hype train of Tom Duquesnoy, and Tom Duquesnoy is only 24 years old too. So I mean, he's got a lot to learn. I will go with Tom Duquesnoy in this fight. I think he is going to get this one done. I'm going to go with the Fire Kid, and I'm going to say he gets it done via TKO because I'm not sure if he wins a decision because of the grappling advantage that Stamann has. He could end up out-wrestling Duquesnoy throughout all 3 rounds, and like I said, derailing that hype train. But I'm going to say Duquesnoy gets it done. I'm going to say he gets it done with a TKO. I'm going to go ahead and just say, let's say round 2 he gets it done. I think early in the fight he might struggle a little bit, but I think he'll land a big combination on the feet in the second round before he gets taken down and finish the fight and realize that he needs to work on his takedown defense.
Even though I picked Cody Stamann, I bashed him for the Mr. Wonderful name. Going through his info here, I also see that he trains at a place called Michigan Top Team. Can we stop this?
Michigan Top Team.
No more top teams. Like Des Moines Top Team, Norfolk Top Team. No, not every state and city gets a top team.
There's American Top Team. That's it.
That
no
should
more.
be it. Yes.
No more. Create your own damn name. Stop
Brazilian
ripping people off.
Brazilian Top Team also.
Why is that a thing? Come on. Let's go. Black Zillions. That was good. I enjoyed that name. That's a good name. It was a camp that fell through very fast, I think. But a good name nonetheless. Creative. Make it creative. Come on, guys. Creativity. Don't just name it Top Team over and over and over again. It's like Jackson Wink. Just first and last. I mean, just last and last name for like your 2 main coaches. Like, be creative. Come on, guys. You can do this.
Outsource. Come on. Like, go to the MMA Twitter. They'll come up with some good names.
Yeah, I mean, it's not hard to be creative. It's not hard to. I mean, usually there's more than one coach at a gym, so you can go back and forth. I mean, roof a sport. I mean, don't just that's. I don't know, but that rants for another podcast. But all right, so that will do it for the preliminary card for UFC 216. On to the main card, which I'm very excited for. Definitely some quality fights in this one. The first fight is Beneil Dariush and Evan Dunham, which is a very good fight. Would have been good if Evan Dunham was like a few years younger and still kind of in that prospect era, because he's kind of been up and down throughout his career. But a very solid, fun lightweight fight nonetheless. How do you see this one going down, Tim?
Yeah, this is a real good fight. Evan Dunham has had, I'm doing like career retrospectives for these lightweights, but here we go anyway. Evan Dunham was a guy that like burst on the scene, knocked out Per Eklund back at I think UFC 95.
Yep.
And then upset Marcus Aurelio in his next fight, who at the time like still had a pretty relatively big name from his Pride days, even though that was years past. But he was living off that rep still, and rattled off some good wins against Efren Escudero, Tyson Griffin, who were, notable guys at that point, even though now they're kind of jokes. And then he lost that bullshit, awful, one of the worst decisions I've ever seen in my life against Sean Shirk.
It was awful.
And
Absolutely
I really
awful.
wonder, like, one of my biggest MMA what-ifs, what if Dunham actually won that fight like he should have? Like, would he got a title shot? Like, how would we see Evan Dunham now if that win had gone in his favor? Because I genuinely think if he had won, he probably would have gotten a title shot or a number 1 contenders fight. And I think around that time was the kind of BJ Penn, Frankie Edgar quagmire. And
yes,
at that time, Evan Dunham versus Frankie Edgar, like, to me, that would have been a pick'em fight at that point. Even though Edgar was really good at that point, but so was Evan Dunham. And then he got TKO'd against Mohamed just got caught with some big shots, lost the close decisions to TJ Grant. I feel like his confidence just kind of went after that, because he just started getting whooped up on by good fighters, don't get me wrong, but, Dos Anjos, Cerrone, Barbosa, all really good fighters. Now, at age 35, he's rattled off 4 straight wins against like some pretty decent veterans, and now he gets a high-profile main card fight again. So, congrats to him for getting back on the horse and getting to a prevalent fight. Beneil Dariush uh, just got obliterated against Enson Barbosa. For those that don't remember, I'm glad he's awake. Uh, I'm interested to see how that plays into it because when you suffer a devastating knockout like that, like you're never the same.
Yeah,
And
I agree with
that's
that
good.
entirely. It is going to be interesting to see that because of that case. I hate to interrupt the podcast, but Tim's mic's going in and out, so I'm not sure if me talking will help with that mic going back. And I hate to interrupt Tim's breakdown, but go ahead and continue once again, Tim.
All right, my apologies.
You're
And
good now. All right, cool. It's weird. I don't know why it keeps doing that. We need to get new mics.
yeah, or a new computer
That too.
technology. What are you gonna do? Um, so anyway, I, I'm just curious to see how the knockout affects Dariush. Well, does he fight a little more hesitant? He's not a super aggressive fighter as it is, but I'm curious to see how that affects him defensively. Dunham's not a huge finisher at this point in his career, so I'm not too worried about it. I do think Dariush wins. I do think he's got more tools to fight Dunham with in terms of. I think he could take him down if he needs to and get dominant position, score some points, and I think he does have more power in the stand up. He could hurt Dunham on the feet. Dunham might be a little bit of a better boxer. Uh, he's got some range. He's got a nice 1-2, nice straight right. So it's going to be an interesting fight. I do think it goes the full 15. I do think it's competitive. I just think Dariush does a little bit more. Maybe he's on top for a few more minutes, scores with some elbows, maybe advances, has a couple decent submission attempts, and that's going to be the edge. So looking forward to it. Nice way to kick off the main card. I will go with Benil Dariush.
Alrighty. I basically agree with that analysis to a T for the most part. I mean, it really is interesting to see where Evan Dunham could have gone if he had actually been awarded that decision against Sean Shirk, which he should have gotten. And that was actually his first loss was against Sean Shirk, and he was very much on a tear. And like you said, it would. I never really thought about this. I just thought, all right, Evan Dunham, he barely lost, but I mean, he's right there. Everyone knows he won that fight. He knows he won that fight. He's right there, and then he gets destroyed by Melvin Gillard in the first round, which I don't think many of us really expected. I think there was a chance for that, but I mean, Melvin was just kind of like a one-trick
That was
pony on the feet.
that was Melvin's kind of like random renaissance where all of a sudden we started thinking about him as like a borderline top 10 guy. Like he knocked out Shane Roller around that time, I think.
Yeah, he was on like a 5-fight win streak, and then he got shut down real quick by Joe Lozon after that.
Yeah,
And
he turned back into Melvin Gillard.
basically, unfortunately, he has not had the best career since then. But we're not talking about Melvin Gillard, and I hope Melvin Gillard's doing well.
Thankfully.
Because I know Melvin Gillard's last thing, he was doing a bunch of bare knuckle fights back to back to back after getting knocked out left and right. So
Coke's a hell of a drug.
it is a hell of a drug, and yeah, John Jones knows all about it, unfortunately. But yeah, it would be really interesting to see where Evan Dunham would have gone if he had been rewarded that decision. But he has gone down a bad path and kind of, like you said, made a little comeback. Won 4 fights in a row, all by unanimous decision. It's been a good while since he's finished a fight. The last one he finished was by a doctor stoppage against Nick Lentz back in 2012. Wow, that is crazy.
Jeez. I think that was just like a real bad cut from what I remember.
Yeah, and aside from that, his last finish came against Efren Escudero at UFC Fight Night Maynard versus Diaz in
No way.
2010. That was
Didn't he
his last
TKO like
finish.
Shamar Bailey somewhere in between?
He won by decision.
Oh, wow. I thought he
Yeah,
finished that dude. That's sad.
I know. He hasn't finished a single fight, and I'm just seeing that now. And I mean, and Evan Dunham's racked up a couple solid wins. He beat Ross Pearson, Joe Lozon. He just beat Rick Glenn. I mean, he's racked up a few solid wins. It's been a year since he's fought. I'm not really sure why that's the case. He probably went through a few injuries ever since he won. Yeah, he was scheduled to fight at UFC Fight Night 104 in February, and Dunham pulled out the fight with an injury. He was going to face.
35 now. I mean, that's up there.
Yeah,
He's been through some wars, so
Yeah.
I mean, that stuff's gonna catch up to you.
Yeah, he was going to face Abel Trujillo, so that would have been
Oof.
a
That-
solid scrap. But um, Yeah, so I don't know. Beneil Dariush, like you said, he got absolutely destroyed against Edson Barboza in his last fight with that ridiculous flying knee KO. Was not doing bad at all before that though. Was kind of boxing up Edson Barboza to an extent. I mean, Beneil Dariush has some solid striking. Definitely not bad on the feet. He's got some solid wrestling. He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and Evan Dunham is no slouch on the ground as well, so it'll be interesting to see how this goes. But like you said, I think Beneil Dariush will have that advantage where he can get in those advantageous positions and not be entirely outclassed on the ground by Evan Dunham by any means, because he's more than capable of hanging with Evan Dunham on the ground. So I see him mixing up on the feet. Evan Dunham will probably try to keep at a distance, land some leg kicks, throw some combinations. He does have some pretty good boxing. But Beneil Dariush actually has a 2-inch reach advantage over Evan Dunham, which is interesting. I think Beneil Dariush is going to mix up striking with takedowns and just kind of frustrate Evan Dunham on the feet and frustrate Evan Dunham with the takedowns and with the grappling and the dominant top control. And I see Beneil Dariush taking this one. I'm going to go with the unanimous decision for Beneil Dariush in a fun little lightweight scrap to start off the main card.
Take it.
All right. Next fight is a women's flyweight bout. Do you want to talk about this one? Or do you want to head straight to the Fabricio Verdum Derek Lewis fight?
Is this the Andrea Lee fight that's not actually happening?
Mara Romero Borella against Kalindra Feria, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing those names. I've never heard of these girls.
This might be the chick that Andrea Lee was supposed to fight, and they found a quick replacement for her, I assume. Yeah, no, we can pass. We can skip on that.
Okay. We are missing out on
Good luck, ladies.
We are missing out on an amazing a strawweight women's bout. No, actually, flyweight women's bout between Paige Van Zandt and Jessica Ai. We are missing out so much.
I do enjoy looking at both of those women.
Yes.
I actually really enjoy watching Jessica Ai fight as well. She's been pretty unlucky in this last couple fights.
She has been she's dropped 4 in a row.
And she's been fighting really good competition. I think she would have beat the snot out of Paige Van Zandt,
I think
especially at Jessica Ai's more natural weight class. And I think she's going to do real well at 125. So it's a shame that's not happening. Van Zandt had some issues, I think.
Yeah, she had gone. I mean, she had a bunch of different issues. I think she had like a ringworm and stuff, and some like a herniated disc or something like that too. I saw she tweeted some, and she had just battling a whole a whole slew of injuries. So, and whether or not Paige Van Zandt is kind of a joke in MMA, which I think she is to a degree. I mean, she's got some decent talent. She's a solid fighter, but for the way the UFC is promoting her and like Sage Northcutt, it's just kind of a big joke to me. I think it's hilarious. But with all that being said, you know, it can't help but feel bad for Paige Van Zandt going through all that crap.
Paige Van Zandt's way better than Sage Northcutt, just for the record.
Oh, she is. Sage Northcutt is just god awful.
Like lost at UFC 200 against a guy that like shouldn't be in the UFC. So
yeah,
at least Paige Van Zandt has like a couple decent wins against girls that are still floating around. That head kick against Beck Rollins, it was incredible.
That was very solid. It was solid. Even though Beck Rollins is not the best fighter, but I mean Paige Van Zandt,
she's fine.
Yeah, she's okay. But Paige Van Zandt, I mean, she really just kind of loses to top competition. I mean, Michelle Watterson, Rose Namajunas, and Tisha Torres. Those are her only losses. I mean, all good fighters.
Not terrible.
Yeah, so, you know, hopefully Paige Van Zandt can bounce back from all those injuries, and hopefully we can see Jessica Ai here pretty soon, because it's been over a year since we've seen Jessica Ai fight, and it will be very nice to see her compete at 125. All right, so on to this heavyweight bout between Fabricio Verdum and Derek Lewis, the Black Beast. I'm rooting for Derek Lewis for sure, but with that being said, I don't know if this one plays out for him very well. How do you see it playing out?
Yeah, I'm also rooting for Derek Lewis. I think this is think you'd have to be pretty silly to not be rooting for Derek Lewis. Fabricio Verdum has recently turned full heel.
Yeah, big
He was
time.
a pretty like nice company guy for a while. Was very helpful in promoting the UFC in Spanish.
Yeah, and when he was the
Obviously,
champ, he was when he was going out there, was making all those funny faces in Brazil and
yeah, he
stuff,
was basically a walking meme for a while.
and
Of
now
course,
he's just like complete homophobic douchebag,
yeah, racist, homophobic, fuck, for the lack of a better term.
basically.
Um, I like watching the guy fight. Don't get me wrong. I have a lot of respect for him. I think he's probably the fourth best heavyweight in the world.
Yeah, I mean he's beaten like the best heavyweights ever. You can make an argument for him. I mean, he beat
Oh, for sure.
Fedor,
His resume is arguably the
ridiculous.
best in UFC heavyweight history.
Which is crazy to think because I mean this is the guy who went out and got freaking destroyed by Junior Dos Santos in Junior Dos Santos's debut, and I mean ever
Face
since
planted.
yeah, completely face planted. That's what he was known for the longest time, and then he went to Strikeforce, beat Fedor, which nobody saw coming. Lost to Alistar Overeem, and then he came in the UFC and went on this ridiculous tear and developed solid striking skills and went on to knock out Mark Hunt, which is insane. Submitted Cain Velasquez. Whether or not Cain was injured in that fight, or Cain's injured in every fight he fights in,
Yeah.
is to be determined. But and if he would have won a rematch, that's also to be determined. But I mean, the guy's got the resume. And he's 39 years old at this point. Actually, he's 40 now. Wow, he's 40 years old, which I did not. I mean, it's kind of almost expected because he's been fighting for so long. But
I mean, you look at the like prominent heavyweights right now in MMA, and there's a lot of 30-plus-year-olds. I
that
mean,
is true. I mean,
heavyweight
even
is
Kane, I think Kane's in his mid
yeah
late
at this
30s,
point. I
35.
mean, Dos Santos is mid 30s. Overeem is at least that. Arlovsky's still hanging around.
Overeem's 37. I mean, the youngest. I mean, how old is Stipe? I think Stipe's in his.
I think
Stipe's 35. Holy
yeah,
crap!
he got in the game late. So
Yeah.
he's not doesn't have the mileage on him that guys like Verdum and Dos Santos and Kane and Arlovsky do. But I mean that athleticism is going to go pretty quick. But the problem with heavyweight, I don't even know if you want to call it a problem. All the dudes hit so hard, and not a lot of them can withstand those shots. Like there's a lot of bad shins at heavyweight. It's not a coincidence. Arlovsky, Overeem, Dos Santos at this point, now that he's pretty shot-born. Stipe's been hurt in a lot of his fights. I mean, these dudes are hitting real hard, and it's the same reason tight ends get hurt in the NFL all the time. Human bodies aren't supposed to be this huge and be that athletic. So they push these bodies to such a degree, and then they're inflicting bodily harm on others, and it's just like a disaster. Like we touched on it quickly in the God Beer Harris fight, is that if these fights go past the first round, it's either like brain battering violence or it's 3 rounds of, hell for the viewer and the participants. So
Basically, I mean, it doesn't get much worse than that. I mean,
it's like I have a really hard time watching even quote unquote high level heavyweight MMA because it's like you're just watching these dudes live be whittled down to nothing. Like Arlovsky has, I think, another fight scheduled. Like, dude,
no, please, no. I don't want to see Andre Arlovsky fight anymore. Please,
you've been
please.
sprained how many times? And Verdum's getting up there too. I mean, if he gets slammered against Derek Lewis, it wouldn't surprise anybody. That dude hits
No,
like a train.
I wouldn't be surprised at all either. I mean, but it's like, oh God, heavyweight is such a mess. There's really just like 3 or 4 select guys you can pick out and say those guys I would enjoy. Like I said earlier, I would enjoy watching those guys go at it for 5 rounds, or I would enjoy at least like 3 solid rounds out of these guys. Other than that, it's like you want the thing to end in the first round, or go home. Like stop. I mean,
Even
even
the Overeem like Mark Hunt fight.
yeah, that was a
That
drag for 3 rounds until Overeem
it
finally
went
finished him.
yeah, it went late, and everyone's like, oh God. Even like 2 guys that are in the top 5, it's like, can this just end already? For God's sakes! Like Kane is like one of my all-time favorites. I was, saying that guy was going to be UFC heavyweight champion when uh, people thought that Brock Lesnar was going to, reign supreme for years and years. So I'm all excited. I'm excited for him to come back, but who knows what he's going to look like? I mean, he's had how many like ACL tears? Uh,
Back surgeries like 3
yeah,
different times.
he's had,
Jeez.
3 wars. Well, 2 wars with Dos Santos, one of which the first fight he got knocked out. Like, he can't be physically the same guy. He's an athletic freak, don't get me wrong. If anyone was going to come back from that stuff, it'd be him. But, eventually he's going to hit a wall. And who knows what he's going to be like when he comes back. Although I'm excited at the prospect of seeing it. But in terms of going back to this fight after that long-winded heavyweight rant, um, Verdum is clearly the more skilled fighter, but as I've been kind of alluding to, that only matters so much.
Yeah.
He could probably stay away and like leg kick and try to get Derek Lewis tired, maybe clinch him up, try for some in close takedowns. Verdum's like clinch is really really good, Muay Thai, and just his takedowns from there. He's got some judo background as well, including his elite heavyweight jiu-jitsu, probably the best heavyweight grappler we've ever seen.
Likely. I mean, he's submitted Nog too, which is insane. I mean,
Right.
only Frank
Even
Mir I think has submitted Nog other than Verdum.
I mean, even outside MMA, it's won ADCC I think 3 times.
Yeah, the guy's
So
ridiculous on the ground.
it's it's his game if it goes there. And if I had to make a pick, I'd probably go with Verdum by like a later submission, maybe like later in the second round, because I think by the third round, neither of them is going to be able to do anything of substance. So it would have to be like late in the second round when Lewis starts getting tired. I mean, he'll start getting tired like at minute 4, but
Yeah.
when he starts getting like tired to the point where he can't do anything, like you know, right before the Dada 5000 level
Oh
of
no.
tired.
No, 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 no. No, 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 no. Don't bring that up. Please don't bring that up. No.
Uh,
R.I.P. Kimbo Slice.
RIP
R.I.P.
Dada 5000,
Yeah,
although
him
he
too.
came back.
He
Came
came
back
back to
to life.
life. It's crazy. Like, I mean, how Dada 5000 went through like cardiac arrest like twice. Once like in the ring, and then at the hospital, and then a few months later, Kimbo is the one who died of a heart attack. Like,
No, like
God.
what would have the Vegas odds have been of who's gonna die first between those two at that point?
I mean, that would have been better odds than the actual fight that happened. Sweet Jesus, but no,
That's I'm just gonna go back and say that was a really low
that
low.
was the lowest point probably in MMA history of like actual when it comes to like the legitimate leagues, not these
Oh yeah.
like
Well, I
do
also
you
would say
follow
the joke that I just made was pretty low on that scale as well.
do you follow Capoza on Twitter?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, some of the stuff he posts because he watches like literally everything that
Yeah,
comes
that
on
dude's
that's
an
mixed martial arts.
MVP.
And some of the stuff he posts is like there's like guys in the ring in like armor fighting. It's
Oh
hilarious.
yeah.
It's
Dude,
so
I've
funny.
in like 2009, 2010, 11, when I was literally watching every single MMA card that happened ever. I didn't have a job or a girlfriend, shockingly. Um,
They don't need to know that. It's
I
okay.
was living in my mom's basement, crazy. So when I was watching all that stuff, like, dude, I've seen some. I was watching like King of the Cage cards from like random small towns in Arizona or wherever, and there's some dudes that like should never do anything athletic. Like they should play pickup basketball, let alone be in a combat sport. Like dudes
No,
that make butterbean look athletic.
yeah, I've seen awful stuff. I mean, real awful stuff. But in terms of like mainstream-ish MMA, high-level organizations like Bellator or a UFC, that was probably the single lowest point in
A,
MMA history.
a close second would be John Murphy and Dave Huckabee, which I believe was an Elite XC.
Oh, I don't even think I've seen that fight.
Oh, please watch it
Oh
and let
man.
me know your reaction.
So who's that? You said who's that again?
John Murphy and Dave Huckabee.
John Murphy and Dave Huckamo. I will write that down. So,
Please.
because I would like to watch that. I love watching that crap, but
If you
we've
wanna
gotten
be
way
like,
off topic here. But
I don't know how off topic it really is, honestly.
yeah, I mean, not
Bad heavyweight MMA.
not too off topic. Okay, Dave Huckabee. There we go. Okay. Anyway, Fabricio Verdum and Derek Lewis. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy that these two are. I think Derek Lewis is ranked 6th, and Fabricio Verdum is ranked like 3rd or 4th in the heavyweight rankings. Fabricio Verdum's 40 years old. You really don't see anyone in the heavyweight division like under the age of 30. Even Francis Ngannou, who's just breaking into the sport and has quite a bit of potential, but unfortunately is in the heavyweight division, so you never know. He's 31 years old, and he's only got like 10 or 11 pro fights. So, it's really weird seeing that, but, it is what it is. But heavyweight is just, it's such a clusterfuck in general. I mean, it always has been. But unless more guys like Stipe Miocic or Cain Velasquez come up through the ranks, we're just going to see the same thing over and over and over again in heavyweight. Heavyweight.
It's sad that like one of the dudes that we're all excited about is Alexander Volkov, who like washed out of Bellator.
Basically.
And he's 28. I think he's like the youngest good heavyweight there is.
Well, let's hope for the best with him. He just finished Stefan Struve in his last fight. Shouts, yes. Like I said, I'm definitely pulling for Derek Lewis, and if you're not rooting for Derek Lewis, you need to get your head checked. Derek Lewis was out here literally driving his truck into Hurricane Harvey, saving victims.
We talked about the heelness of Fabricio Verdum. The babyfaceness of Derek Lewis is also very strong.
It is, and even though he will be on Instagram, trash talking about Travis Brown and Ronda Rousey, which is so funny. I think it's hilarious. He's saying all this bad stuff about people, and he's still considered like the great guy. I mean, like Derek Lewis is such a great guy. I mean, he is. Like, his social media game is on point. If you don't follow him on social media, please do. He's a good follow. He's a funny guy. Really entertaining stuff to hear from him. Unfortunately, he's a solid striker, has some good technique, has a lot of power in his hands. His ground game is virtually non-existent. He'll whip up a couple different sweeps off of his back just because of his pure brute strength. But other than that, I mean, if this fight hits the ground and is on there for more than about 30 to 40 seconds, Fabricio Verdum's probably going to lock up the submission. And that's pretty much what I see happening. And even on the feet, unless Fabricio gets so careless like he kind of did against Stipe Miocic, where he basically charged forward and asked to be knocked out, I don't think Derek Lewis is going to land that punch, and I don't think Derek Lewis is going to get that. Could he? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, could Derek Lewis knock out Fabricio Verdum? Abso-freaking-lutely. In like 30 seconds. It can happen. Who knows?
If karma's a thing, he will.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, karma was a real thing with John Jones. He knocked out Daniel Cormier after everything, and then test positive for a damn anabolic steroid or Turinabol. So
can I do a quick side note since we're talking about John Jones for a second? I just have a funny story I need to share.
Do you think?
So, Facebook reminds you of things that you've done on that day from years prior. So in the MMA Fanatics days, we had John Jones as a guest before his fight with Matt Hamill, I believe.
Wow, that's crazy.
Back in the day. So this was
who all talked to him? Was it just you that talked to him?
Well, it was all three of us. We had him on the show.
Okay.
But I was the one that put the interview together. And this was back in the day. I don't even know when that fight took place. So probably I think
it was 09.
Yeah, 08, 09.
I remember because that was the John Jones Matt Hamill fight. That was on the same card as Kimbo Slice and Houston Alexander.
Wow.
Yeah.
It comes full circle.
It does. It all comes
Rest
full
in
circle.
Peace, Kimbo.
R.I.P.
So
I shouldn't laugh at that, but R.I.P. Kimbo.
My buddy met him at a bar one time in Charleston. He said he was really nice.
Yeah, anyway. I mean, he seems like a nice guy. I mean, I watched.
Speaking of, in terms of people who aren't nice, John Jones. So, this was before MMA managers really became a thing. That was a couple years later. So this was still in the days where you could just reach out to a fighter and ask him to come on your radio show and he would either say yes or he would say no and give you his number. Anyway, so Facebook reminded me that I had a conversation on the phone with John Jones to put this interview together, where I called him and was talking. Um, hey, you should call in this time. Here's the number. It's going to be us three, and whatever. We'll keep you for 30 minutes, whatever.
Right.
Apparently, I don't know how it happened, but I was made a joke or like probably referred to like, hey, I'll talk to you manana, and said some stupid Spanglish phrase.
Mm-hmm.
And Facebook reminded me of a status I put up, said like joking with John Bones Jones in Spanish is pretty cool or something.
Oh my god.
And
oh my god, how times
our
have
relationship
changed.
dissolved rather quickly in the months to follow. But it was funny that it reminded me of like 8 years ago today or a couple days ago that happened. I didn't even remember that conversation until it reminded me.
R.I.P. John Jones.
Yeah, R.I.P. John Jones's face run.
R.I.P. John Jones is his MMA career. Hopefully,
yeah, his well-being.
God, man, that is a story for a different podcast. But okay, so Derek Lewis and Fabricio Verdum. What I was saying, basically, Fabricio Verdum is probably going to win this fight. However, I mean, it's literally 50-50. Anything can happen in heavyweight, but I would definitely favor Verdum. He's more technical on the feet than Derek Lewis. I'm not sure if he has a reach advantage or not, but I mean, either way, he'll utilize leg kicks. He'll throw combinations here and there, and he'll utilize his clinch work to take Derek Lewis down. And once he does, I think it's all she wrote. So I'm gonna go with Fabricio Verdum. I'm gonna say an early second round submission after Derek Lewis starts to tire. And like I said, I like Derek Lewis. I really do. I'm a big fan of him. Definitely be rooting for him in this fight. Hopefully he gets the knockout. And he was going to retire after the Mark Hunt loss, and I'm not sure what made him decide to come back. But I'm excited to see him back. Hopefully he's recognizing that he needs to work on certain things in order to be a top contender and hang with these top guys. But I just really haven't seen any large improvements from Derek Lewis over the years. He's been a very active fighter, which kind of I think hurts his improvement at the end of the day. But, Fabricio Verdum is more talented than him in just about every aspect. But, like I said, that chin is a very delicate thing in the heavyweight division. And even Derek Lewis's chin is delicate. But, I mean, Derek Lewis lands that right hand, it could be lights out. So that's what I'm hoping for. But I'm going to go ahead and pick Fabricio Verdum with a second round submission. Maybe he locks up an arm triangle or a Kimura of some sort. All right. To the co-main event of the evening, we are going to break down Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson's title defense against Ray Borg. We're getting into the top two fights. We've already talked for an hour. If we haven't bored you to death, hopefully you've enjoyed the podcast this far. Now we're going to get into the real good stuff. Demetrious Johnson and Ray Borg. This fight was scheduled for UFC 215. If you guys were not aware, and Ray Borg pulled out right around this time, so I should probably keep my Twitter feed nice and ready and steady just in case something happens. In fact, I'm gonna pull that up right now and make sure nothing's happened. I'm actually looking this up right now. Okay, yeah, we're good so far. He hasn't pulled out yet, so no pullouts yet, and I probably shouldn't joke about this or it'll actually happen. But
we haven't seen any pictures of him at like Golden Corral or anything, so things are looking like they're at least on track.
Things are looking on track. Look at my diet; everything's going well tomorrow. Yeah, he is. He's pulled out again. But
breaking pictures of Ray Borg at In-N-Out have surfaced.
I think I don't know if Ray Borg would even pull out of the fight. I almost think he would just say fuck it and try to make weight and not make weight, but hopefully that's not the case. I mean, maybe this will be an instance where, speaking of Kapoza, I think he had tweeted when Ray Borg pulled out, he was saying, I think the MMA gods were looking down and saying, no, we're not letting Demetrious Johnson break Anderson Silva's record by beating Ray Borg. We're not going to let it happen.
The UFC clearly didn't take those signals because they just rebooked it. Rebooked
it for the next card. I was really no disrespect to Ray Borg. He's a solid, talented fighter. A young guy and could definitely be a threat to the crown later down the line. and maybe possibly a move to bantamweight might be better if the UFC adopts those other weight classes and move to like 130 pounds or something, because he seems to have trouble making the flyweight limit. But I wouldn't have minded to see if Demetrious Johnson went up, just said screw it, and they went up against Sergio Pettis. Just something different. I mean, I just I don't know. Ray Borg's so unreliable. If he's able to make it to fight night, I will actually be kind of surprised. Happy, but surprised. But, yeah, so they rescheduled it for UFC 216 as the co-main event. Once again, they're not making a huge deal out of Demetrious Johnson breaking the consecutive title defense record. If he does, I mean, MMA Junkie and MMA Fighting, we'll talk about it for a few days, and then we'll just move on. Unfortunately, I think I think ultimately Demetrious Johnson's lack of promotion has been the UFC's fault to a degree. I mean, at the end of the day, not every single fighter is going to be able to be as witty and trash talk the way Conor McGregor does. So, you know, I just feel like the UFC could have promoted him more over the years to where this would be far more significant to not just MMA fans, but maybe even the general public. But here we are now. Demetrious Johnson's looking to break Anderson Silva's record against Ray Borg at UFC 216. Co-main event of the evening. How do you see this thing playing out?
I think it's going to be a pretty easy win for Demetrious Johnson, in all honesty. Like, you know, you mentioned that we're getting to the big fights. Like, it is a big fight in the sense that it's like two, you know, obviously the probably arguably greatest pound for pound fighter in the world right now versus, you know, a top 5 challenger. But flyweight is just at a point right now, and has been for a few years, where the number one guy is so much more developed than the rest of the weight class. It's just really hurting the whole thing as a whole, and I think that's a big part of why Demetrious Johnson doesn't get as much promotion or hype or fanfare as someone like Anderson Silva. Or Anderson Silva is probably the best example, because George St. Pierre had like a whole country behind him, and he you know, he was a different kind of marketable than someone like Anderson Silva, who didn't speak English, but it was his greatness that was the marketability.
Right.
It was the fact
the
that
flashiness, the way he finished dudes. I mean, and Demetrious is an exciting fighter, and he does finish guys, but it's just not,
especially
you know,
recently.
Yeah, I mean, he's finished like his past few fights, aside from the who did he fight against after Henry Cejudo? Who did he fight? Tim Elliott. He didn't finish Tim Elliott, and he didn't finish John Dodson. But I mean, he's finished over, I think, half of his title defenses. Right. So it's not necessarily a case of him not finishing fights or not putting on exciting fights.
Here's what I think it is, honestly, is Anderson Silva had foils. Like, Rich Franklin was a big name. Like, he got obliterated in both fights, but especially in the second fight, like, people kind of started talking themselves into Rich Franklin a little bit.
Right.
You had Dan Henderson, who was the prime middleweight champion. Like, you know, people thought he had a decent chance, won the first round. So, you know, he had some challenge. And then Chael Sonnen came, you know, a few years later.
The Chael Sonnen one was big.
His ultimate foil. And that's when, you know, around that time is when Anderson really kind of blew up. Because before that, he had that latest fight, which we touched on earlier, the Maia fight, the Cote fight, which is just kind of like, eh.
It was really, it was kind of the, I think it was, you know, the Damian Maia fight happened, and I know we're getting a little off topic here, but screw it. I mean, we're talking about Demetrious Johnson's promotion, so not entirely. You know, Anderson had the fight against Damian Maia, and then everyone was really, really, really hating Anderson Silva after that. So then the Chael Sonnen fight happened, and Chael was so close to winning and talked all that trash, like you said. I mean, he really created that foil for Anderson, and then he got submitted at the end of the fight. And then that's kind of when Anderson, more intrigue was built in Anderson, because instead of, he's just going to win and cruise to a decision, it's, holy crap, Chael Sonnen almost finished the fight and almost beat Anderson. I mean, landed over 300 punches, landed more punches in one fight than Anderson's whole UFC career. You know, how is that going to, you know, it created more intrigue, I believe. And then you had the front kick KO against Vitor Belfort, the next fight.
Yeah.
on Super Bowl weekend, which was insane. And I think after that point, that's when he kind of started to blow up even more. Then
Yeah, that pay-per-view did well. People saw
beat,
that as a big win, the Belfort win at the time.
yeah.
And I think the Okami fight was after that.
It was in
And
Brazil, which was big for Brazil. At
yeah,
least
I
like
think
his popularity in Brazil.
the pay-per-view did a pretty solid number from what I remember as well. So he kind of, you could argue that the reason he became as marketable was because of Chael and he had a foil. DJ, he fought Benavidez multiple times, and the first fight was somewhat competitive, but maybe if Ian McCall had stayed healthy, he could have been the foil to him. Considering the first fight, McCall probably should have won, but he hasn't had a guy that maybe has talked some trash, that has pushed him in the fight, that has made us excited to see Demetrious Johnson compete. Like, it's just been a bunch of guys that we all just assume he's going to run through.
Basically.
A lot of Wilson Hayes. People got a little bit excited about Henry Cejudo because he was a good prospect. But
Demetrious shut that down real quick.
Yeah, it was also like the co-main event of some card. Like, not a lot of promotion going in. Cejudo hadn't really even had that many televised fights. So maybe Sergio Pettis is that guy. He certainly has the dynamism and the name value just with his last name alone, that more people are going to be interested in that.
Well, not just that too, but Cejudo and Pettis are going to, I believe, fight at UFC 218 or I think one of these upcoming fights. And Henry Cejudo looked very good in his last fight and was kind of coming into his own recently and definitely developing more. So that'll be interesting. I want to see DJ challenge for 135 though at the end of the day, especially after 11 title defenses. I think that's kind of should be the next. I think they should do. I think they should do DJ against the winner of TJ and Cody Garbrandt. I'm not sure if they'll do that, especially with Demetrious Johnson not wanting to fight TJ Dillashaw and Dana White making a massive deal out of it.
Yeah.
And
that was just a mess.
Yeah, it was. There's two sides of the story always, and a lot of these just kind of. Fans who don't really look into the bigger picture are siding with the UFC in this case and saying, I don't understand why DJ didn't take the fight, blah, 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 this and that, but you don't know the actual details of it. Apparently, Demetrious Johnson was not going to get any type of pay cut, not type of pay increase or pay-per-view points for taking on a guy like TJ Dillashaw, especially a guy who's never fought at 125. There was not going to be any extra incentive for Demetrious Johnson to take the fight and for it to be kind of a last-minute thing. You could definitely make an argument like, you should just accept any challenge that comes your way. Like, I don't understand why you just didn't take it. But at the end of the day...
That's like the old mentality, like the old UFC 50 mentality when it's like, okay, like, just take whatever. Like, no, like, this is a business. This is prize fighting. Like,
right.
Demetrious Johnson has way
point.
more to lose than TJ Dillashaw. Like, we've seen TJ Dillashaw lose. We've seen him get embarrassed. Like, it's not a huge deal. Like, DJ Dillashaw would probably be an underdog, and if he lost, like, okay, you go to 135 or 125, you have some other big fights. If DJ loses, not only does he lose the pay-per-view record, his whole title reign was like an afterthought, essentially. Like, he's fighting for, almost relevance. Not like MMA relevance. He's obviously very relevant, but like mainstream sports relevance. Him losing to a dude that's never fought in the weight class, that isn't even that huge a name in the grand scheme of things, is it's just silly. Like, you got to be compensated for that. You got to be, get some guaranteed zeros on that contract. You got to be guaranteed either a headliner or a big venue, something. So I don't fault them for that at all. I'm not even like a big DJ fan.
I don't fault him either for it. Yeah, I would definitely consider myself a DJ fan. I've kind of cultivated into that over the past couple of years, but especially after everything that had actually come out, and if you looked into the story, aside from just hearing Dana White tweet, "I don't understand why Demetrious Johnson won't take the fight," blah blah blah, this and that. Like I said, Demetrious wasn't compensated anything additional for possibly taking on a guy who's never fought at flyweight, might miss weight. Wasn't going to be compensated if TJ missed weight. And, TJ isn't even the 135-pound champ. He's challenging for it, and he was the previous champ, but he's not the current champ. It's not this, and TJ is not a huge pay-per-view draw, so I don't understand where this, ridiculousness was coming from all these MMA fans. But, MMA fans are just probably, in terms of a sport, probably the worst fans on the planet, in all
That's
reality.
Interesting. I haven't really thought about that, but they're certainly up there.
They're pretty bad, especially the people who. It's to me, a lot of these quote unquote fans are more so just into it because of Conor McGregor, which is perfectly fine. Conor McGregor has done that for himself. He's created this massive following. I think he actually has more followers on Twitter and Instagram than the UFC does. So, props to Conor. I'm not hating on the guy at all, but I more so hate on his fans. His fans don't take any time to look into anything. If it's not about Conor, it's not right. They don't think Max Holloway is the real featherweight champ. They don't think that this interim title fight is going to be worth anything. And it's anything that has anything to do other than with Conor and Conor doing well, it's just negative stuff, which is very frustrating to me. And I'm sure it's frustrating to you as a longtime fan too, somebody who's watched the sport for and paid attention to the sport for close to 10 years now and been through the Anderson Silva phase, the Randy Couture phase, the Chuck Liddell phase, GSP phases. So it's just, Conor's brought this mainstream audience into MMA, but I almost wouldn't want to welcome it as much now, as I would have in the past, just because of the quality of fans. I'd rather have more quality fans in the sport, maybe less, rather than having more quantity now and less quality. You know what I mean?
For sure. And I think I listened to the Dan Lepetard show a lot, ESPN Radio.
Okay.
And I forget who they had. I want to say Chael or an MMA guest of some sort. And they commented after, of course, all the MMA fans are going to tune in and just berate them with, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know the difference between an armbar and a Kimura. You don't know. You never seen Chael versus Jeremy Horn. Dumb fucking MMA shit. And they were commenting about how awful MMA fans are. And I was just like, yep. That's MMA fans for you.
No, they're
Gotta
terrible.
love 'em.
They're terrible. And
They want mainstream acceptance, but they refuse to give it. It's so stupid.
yeah, they want the mainstream acceptance, and then the quality of the fan is just so awful, and they don't look at anything. Don't get me wrong. Football fans are stupid too. There are plenty of stupid basketball fans. There's stupid fans in every single sport. And I hate because I hate it when, some people are just like, oh, the Arizona Cardinals or the Washington Redskins, they have the worst fans in the world. And I understand there's bad fans, and Cowboys fans are really bad too. I know you're a Ravens fan, and I'm a Redskins. I'm a Redskins fan, which is actually looking a little better nowadays. But, yeah, it's just if you're into the sport, at least be remotely educated about it. You watch fights other than just Conor McGregor. And if you think everyone in the lightweight division is trash that isn't Conor McGregor or Nate Diaz, most people who watch the McGregor-Diaz fight don't think Diaz is a lightweight. They think Diaz is a heavyweight, thanks to Skip Bayless.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you listen to Skip Bayless, he's a super heavyweight.
Super heavyweight. He's a sumo wrestler. If you guys, I hope you watched that skit. I actually did a reaction video on my YouTube channel.
I think that's where I saw it for the first time. And
my God.
That's hilarious.
I was so weak. He said, he guessed that Nate was 40 pounds heavier, had a 10-inch or 12-inch reach advantage over Conor.
And Shannon Sharp is just agreeing with everything. He's like, "Yep, I know."
Well, I don't think it was even that. Shannon Sharp didn't agree with the sumo wrestling part, but
he didn't call him out.
Yeah, he didn't call him out because he didn't know. He was like, "Oh, well, how?" Yeah, he's like, "How did Nate Diaz get Conor McGregor down?" Then, well, he sumo wrestled him. He was so big. He's like, "No, he put them hands on him." I'm like, "You guys are so fucking stupid." Oh my God!
Imagine if Woodley or one of these other Fox UFC analysts was in studio for that.
Oh
They would
my
have,
god.
their head would have exploded.
I wish they would have walked out and been like, guys, like like
Would have loved to seen the look on Woodley's face if he had to like try to talk after that.
oh my god. I love Tyron Woodley. I mean, he hasn't been the most exciting fights recently, but I'm a big fan of Tyron. He keeps it real, and I like his commentary. And I like his analysis on Fox, and it's crazy because like Fox is like where the UFC does their advertising through and everything, and that's who they have the TV deal with. And then they're just okay with Skip Bayless acting a fool, and just he's got more of an audience than like the UFC Tonight crew does, and is pushing this narrative that Nate Diaz is a freaking heavyweight.
I don't know how big the audience actually is.
No, not anymore. I think it's like
one of my
maybe
favorite Twitter follows is Richard Deitch from Sports Illustrated.
Yeah.
Who does a pretty good podcast where he like interviews sports media personalities, and he like routinely will tweet like whatever the number for that first fake show is.
Mm-hmm. First
and
day.
whatever it's called. No, the Skip Bayless show. I don't know what it's actually called.
First fake might as well be Undisputed.
Oh, okay. So he'll write like, yeah, the Undisputed ratings was this, which was beaten by a 40-year-old rerun of Gunsmoke on this channel at this time. It's pretty great.
Oh, that is hilarious. No, but their ratings are trash. But I can't even imagine what UFC Tonight's ratings are. I mean,
yeah,
it can't be that good. It probably can't be much
fans,
better.
I think are the only ones that watch any of those like non-FX Fox channels.
Yeah, I agree. But it's just crazy to think that the UFC is just like, yeah, that's perfectly fine. But
here, I'm going to get us back on topic. Right?
Yes, we definitely need to get back on topic because
right.
We've been talking for an hour and 20 minutes, and we still got the main event to cover.
Fox, as we mentioned, also routinely main evented on their Fox UFC shows by one Demetrious Johnson.
Yes.
Boom, back
in action.
Yeah, okay, so in terms of X's and O's analysis, which I didn't get into at all, I don't think there's really much in this because Demetrious Johnson is just so much better everywhere. Like, I don't even honestly see a puncher's chance for Ray Borg in this one.
That's all I give Ray Borg. I think the only way Ray Borg really wins this fight is if it's like if Demetrious Johnson severely underestimates his abilities, or if Ray Borg has just improved so much since his win over Jussier Formiga. I mean, don't get me wrong, his striking has improved over the past couple of years, and he's a young guy. He's a good prospect. More of a wrestler, grappler type of fighter. But, DJ is a better wrestler, a better grappler, a better striker, better in the clinch, faster, maybe not as strong, maybe, because Ray Borg has a tendency to miss weight, and he's a little bigger, possibly. But aside from maybe a size advantage, Ray Borg's not as good as Demetrious in any category. No. So I just see Demetrious picking Ray Borg apart on the feet, mixing up takedowns, stuffing any Ray Borg takedowns, and unless Demetrious gets so careless in an exchange and Ray Borg clips him and puts him down, that's the only way I see Ray Borg winning, or if Demetrious Johnson just severely underestimates him. But Demetrious Johnson's such a smart guy and such a prepared fighter, and he always comes in with a very good game plan and knowing exactly what he's going to do no matter who he's fighting. I don't see that happening at all.
If he was going to underestimate someone, then he would have done it already.
Exactly. It would have happened 5 or 6 fights ago.
And that's what makes his streak that much. Even though there is like I said earlier, a huge gulf between him and I think like the second best flyweight. Just the fact that you can go that many fights and just not make like a crucial mistake is really impressive. I mean, the flyweight weight class, you're obviously just not going to get as much power as like welterweight or middleweight because the dudes just aren't as big, and I think physically can only pack so much of a punch. But he's been next to flawless during this run. Like, he had a couple little hiccups here and there, like the first fight with John Dotson, the first fight with Benavidez. I think he might have lost a round. I think Tim Elliott had him in some trouble early, if I remember. Maybe Tim Elliott won the first round.
Yeah, I think he had won the first round. He rocked Demetrious or something like that.
Yeah, so a couple little hiccups, but in terms of like if you were to calculate all the rounds that he's fought the last however many fights, he's probably lost three of them. That's pretty damn impressive. So I think he adds another body to the resume and bring on either Cejudo or Pettis or jump up to 35.
I 100% agree. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Demetrious Johnson. I'm gonna say he gets pretty somewhat of an early stoppage. I'm gonna go with early third round. I say he gets it done with a TKO or maybe even a submission. But I mean, honestly, it's whatever he wants to do. If he wants to take Borg down and finish him there, he can. If he wants to finish Borg on the feet, he probably can later in the fight. Or if he just wants to outpoint him for 5 rounds, I mean, he could do virtually whatever he wants to do to Ray Borg. I think, in all honesty, unless like I said, unless Demetrius has severely underestimated him or gets clipped in an exchange somehow when he gets careless. If he does get careless, that's the
Hail Mary guillotine or something like that.
Yeah, something happens out of nowhere, which is like so unseen. And if Ray Borg does win, I mean, this is probably the biggest upset I can think of since Holly Holm, Ronda Rousey, which wasn't a big upset, but it was to everyone else.
I don't know what the betting odds for this are. I'm curious to see, but
I don't know. It's probably huge. I think it's got to be. I mean, Demetrius got to be close to minus 1,000 or something.
Borg should probably bet on himself because that's a lot of trips to the Sizzler.
It is. All right, main event of the evening. We will knock this out and end your guys' misery if you're still listening to us. All right, main event of the evening, which is by far my most anticipated fight and probably the fight we're going to talk about the longest and hopefully not get off topic. Tony El Kukui Ferguson taking on the Motown Phenom Kevin Lee for the interim UFC Lightweight title. It is to be determined if the winner of this fight will actually fight Conor McGregor. It is also to be determined if Conor McGregor will ever defend any of his titles or his own one and only title that he has left. Yeah, so this is going to be a really good fight and kind of a return back to normal in the lightweight division because it's been fairly stagnant and, not moving anywhere since Conor beat Eddie Alvarez. There's been quite a few good lightweight fights, but considering Khabib Nurmagomedov was just unable to make weight at UFC 209 and has been pretty MIA since, I think he had back surgery this summer, and that fight between Tony and Khabib has just been non-existent and not been able to come to fruition since it was originally scheduled like last year. The lightweight division's kind of been on hold with this interim title thing, so I think the UFC got tired of it. Tony Ferguson got tired of it. They weren't waiting on Khabib Nurmagomedov anymore, so Kevin Lee versus Tony Ferguson is now for the interim title, which I'm perfectly okay with. At the end of the day, there's not really anyone else in the lightweight rankings I could see genuinely challenging for the interim title right now, aside from Khabib and Tony Ferguson. And Kevin Lee is a guy who the UFC is clearly trying to market and trying to promote. He's pretty good on the mic. He does definitely offer some cringeworthy lines at times, and so does Tony Ferguson. But either way, either of these guys are more than capable of promoting a fight against Conor McGregor and are more than capable of beating Conor McGregor, I think. And this is going to be a very, very, very interesting fight, and I'm interested to hear your take on it. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, speaking to the matchmaking quickly, when it was first announced, I was pretty irate, honestly.
I was to a degree, just because Kevin Lee's only real significant win is Michael Chiesa.
Yeah, and it was a bullshit stoppage, in all honesty. Like, Chiesa probably would have tapped eventually or been choked out, but at the end of the day, he didn't. So I think that's worth noting. I also just can't get the image of Leonardo Santos TKOing Kevin Lee. It doesn't seem like that long ago. But I looked it up and it was like 2 years ago.
It was UFC 194.
Yeah, it was like 2 years ago almost. So he's clearly improved since then. Like, I'm not faulting him.
5 fights in a row now. I think he's won.
Yeah. So again, some decent competition. Like, he beat
Francisco Trinaldo.
Yeah, I was gonna say Masur Nduba in there.
Yeah.
So at first, like I said, I was pissed off that this was the fight because I thought, like, okay, why aren't they doing Khabib? Why aren't they doing Barbosa?
I forgot about Barbosa.
Even though Ferguson and Barbosa have already fought, but I mean, it wasn't that long. It was
about 2 years ago now.
It wasn't too recent, so like they've both improved, I think, and I think 5 rounds would be a big difference. It'd be a really interesting fight, in my opinion. But I think Barbosa was injured or like had a contract negotiation at the time. Khabib's body's really betraying him at this point in multiple ways, so he's out. I honestly thought like them trying to convince Diaz to take the fight, like even though technically he's coming off a loss at welterweight, I still thought maybe you could try to convince him to drop down and fight
Well,
Tony.
I think they had tried to do that back over the summer. I had
Just wanted too much money.
Yeah, of course. He's Diaz brother, but
Yeah.
yeah,
So I
they
mean, this is
yeah,
what
cause
these are all the guys I was thinking about
yeah,
when it was first announced, but then it just kind of each theory got kind of knocked down. It's like, all right, well, I guess Kevin is your best option. Um,
and
it's an interesting.
Tony Ferguson and Kevin Lee had a little exchange on Fox, I think, after Kevin Lee beat Michael Chiesa. They had a little trash talk back and forth, so I think that was another
They're
motivation for
they're
the
both
UFC to make that.
embracing they're in McGregor
Yeah,
and
they are.
have certainly done so. Like Ferguson was one of the most boring dudes you'd ever hear from up until about 14 months ago, when him and most of the UFC roster realized that they might have to actually start saying stuff
They might have to actually start promoting themselves because the
instead
UFC
of just
is
saying,
not
"Yeah,
gonna do it.
whatever Joe Silva gets." It's like, no, dude, if you want to get what you want, talk. Like, say
Please.
anything. It usually works out. So they both figured it out at the right time, and now here they are as the main event. So X's and O's wise, uh, I think Ferguson has the advantage on the feet, even though a lot of people have been picking his stand up apart, saying, "Oh, he lost the first round against Edson, got rocked early against Panada, was got tagged a few times by Dos Anjos." I just think over, especially a 5 round fight, he's gonna find his footing, and he's gonna settle in, and he's gonna just do what he does, like put combinations together.
Hold up, one sec. Your mic's going in and out one more time. I hate to pause you, but if I talk for just a second, maybe your mic will be back. Continue talking. Sorry to interrupt you.
I was on a roll.
I'm sorry.
Uh, Damn technology once
Damn
again.
technology, man. It sucks. So, I'm like, wanting to hear your breakdown, and it keeps going in and out. I'm like, oh, what do you say? All right, go ahead.
Motherfuckers.
All right, I think we're good now.
All right, cool. So I think he's gonna settle in, land some uppercuts, land some hooks. I've been pretty bad at guessing reach advantages today so far, but I want to say that he has a reach advantage.
You're
Just whatever.
actually Kevin Lee's got a 1 inch reach advantage. Kevin Lee's
All
got a
right.
77-inch reach.
He just seems like a stockier guy to. I don't know.
He
All
does.
right. Over 3 on that. So
It's
I'm gonna
okay.
stop guessing that three.
I thought Evan Dunham definitely had a reach advantage over Beneil Dairouche, and that
I
wasn't the
think it's
case.
more just the way he fights. Like he fights a little longer and rangier.
He definitely does.
Anywho, so Ferguson's probably better at using his reach, even though technically Lee does have the advantage. There you go, spun it.
Bam.
Um, so Ferguson, wrestling wise, it's really close. Like both guys are pretty solid in that department. Um, Lee might be a little more explosive in the wrestling department. He's his power double's pretty good. He can take it down in different ways. Ferguson's a little more workman-like his takedowns. I want to say like he does it in the flow of the fight. Um, Lee might be a little more athletic. It's a real close one. Like I didn't actually really start breaking it down until pretty much
Now.
today. I knew I was
Until
doing
right
this,
about now.
or maybe last week. Since that's
Maybe earlier today, last week, something like that.
yeah, exactly. So I'm gonna go with Ferguson. I think he's the favorite. It's going back to favorites, by the way. I looked it up. Like as of Monday, Demetrious Johnson was like a 1100 to 1 or something like that. So
Makes
it
sense.
does. I'm gonna go with Ferguson. I just think he's gonna land some cleaner shots. A little more experience against higher level competition. I like that. I usually favor the guy that is more proven track record. And I can't get the vision of Leonardo Santos, who's not a striker, putting down Kevin Lee. And Ferguson does have some real power. So I'll split the difference and say Tony Ferguson wins a decently competitive decision.
Okay.
And with how MMA judging has gone recently, who knows what the hell is going to happen when that final bell rings. But I feel more comfortable picking Tony Ferguson, and I think a fight with him and Conor is real interesting.
No, I agree with that assessment basically to a T for the most part. A couple things I might slightly disagree with, but yeah, I think the winner of this fight either way can give Conor fits.
That being said, Conor might actually never take that fight.
Absolutely, as well. I mean, why would he? The guy's worth over $100 million. Why would he fight? Somebody unless a Kevin Lee, the winner of this fight, does like create some buzz, which I think is more than possible because I mean these guys have been trash talking. Like I said, they've been trying to entertain people, and Kevin Lee's a little more fluid on the mic. But Tony Ferguson definitely has got some zingers here and there too. Did you see the little exchange between him and Fabricio Verdum?
Yeah, I mean that's where the racism, homophobic comments from Verdum all stem from. So.
Yeah, he said, "Shut up before I ankle pick you." That was weird. He's like, "Have fun fighting on my undercard."
That was a good line.
That was a good one too. But Tony Ferguson's got a few zingers. Kevin Lee's got a few too. I mean, like I remember on I think it was the summer press conference where Kevin Lee was like, Michael Johnson over here talking about killing a man when he's been finishing like half of his fights. So, Kevin Lee's got some zingers too. They can both have their cringe moments, but even Conor McGregor has had his cringe moments. I mean, you could look at that Floyd Mayweather tour, and that third press conference they had was absolutely awful. And Conor McGregor had plenty of trash lines, but
he's perfect for the UFC setup where it's like two press conferences and a weigh-in, where boxing it's like 12 press conferences, some interviews, all this other nonsense.
Yeah, 100%.
He just ran out of material.
No, he did for sure. But still, these guys are at least trying. I can give him that. And the way this fight goes and the way it's finished and how they operate on the mic after the fight is definitely going to be have influence on whether or not a possible fight with them and Conor is on the horizon. But I definitely think both of these guys pose legitimate threats to Conor McGregor. But in terms of this fight, God, I've been going back and forth on it, and to break it down, I think on the feet, Ferguson has a clear advantage over Kevin Lee. Having that image of Kevin Lee getting knocked out by Leonardo Santos is still in my brain as well. And in all honesty, a lot of people don't think Kevin Lee has a great chin, but he's got a decent chin, believe it or not. I mean, it was just that one instance where he got TKO'd. He hasn't been TKO'd in any other fight in his career.
Just the fact that it was a guy that
like Leonardo Santos
is only known for
grappling,
being good at grappling, and once flying armbar and George St. Pierre at Abu Dhabi.
Basically. But still, I mean, he's taken solid shots. I mean, he took quite a few solid hard shots from Francisco Trinaldo in their fight. Has taken plenty of hard shots throughout his career. He's a durable guy, believe it or not. As I say this, he'll probably get knocked out in 30 seconds. But but no, Tony Ferguson definitely
with his reach advantage.
Yeah, totally. But Tony Ferguson definitely has a clear advantage on the feet. If you don't believe that, and if you think that just because he was struggling a little bit against Lando Venata, or even against Edson Barboza first, I mean, look who won those fights. I mean, Tony Ferguson came back, outstruck Lando Venata in the second round, and Darce choked him. Same exact thing with the Edson Barboza scenario. Tony Ferguson's super durable on the feet as well. I mean, I've seen the guy rocked a few times, and he comes back like it's nothing. He's got great cardio. And on the feet, like I said, the diversity of Tony Ferguson is just worlds better than Kevin Lee. And I mean, you can make an art people kind of almost think that I feel like that they think Tony Ferguson isn't that great of a striker because of how awkward he is, but he's so fluid in his awkwardness. The way he switches stances, the way he mixes up combinations. I mean, he throws weird stuff on the feet, but does it so fluidly, and does it just, naturally. It's strange. I mean, he's almost comparable to like a John Jones in terms of awkwardness and diversity on the feet, the way he throws different strikes. So he's got a clear advantage over Kevin Lee. I mean, not just in terms of being able to throw different techniques, but in terms of defense as well. He's got a very good idea for head movement and, and distance management as well. He's got a very good grasp on that. And on the ground, I do think Kevin Lee has an advantage when he gets on top. And in terms of the wrestling department, Kevin Lee, I think, definitely has an advantage. I do think Kevin Lee will find some success early with takedowns. But on the ground, grappling department, it's pretty even. I mean, Tony Ferguson's a very good grappler, brown belt Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu under Eddie Bravo, 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu. And Kevin Lee is just a fantastic top dominant grappler, outstanding wrestler, and has been submitting guys like it's nothing in his past few fights. Has won his last 3 fights by rear naked choke, and finished his last 4 fights in a row. The guy's got some crazy good ground and pound as well. But what I'm getting at is I think early in the fight, Kevin Lee will find success. I do. I think Tony Ferguson has a habit of overcommitting to strikes and leaving himself open to takedowns, and just hasn't fought the wrestlers the caliber of Kevin Lee. I think the closest wrestler and top dominant grappler that Tony Ferguson's fought is honestly Rafael dos Anjos, maybe Gleison Tebow. But Gleison Tebow didn't even try to take him down and got destroyed in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Thompson's a good wrestler. He just didn't really use it much in that fight. He was too busy getting tagged.
Yeah, basically. Big time getting tagged. I just watched that fight the other day. Tony Ferguson put on a clinic against Josh Thompson. He put on a clinic in terms of the utilization of the forward roll for escaping a takedown and just forward rolling for no reason. But so I think early in the fight, like I said, Kevin Lee will find some success with takedowns, but Tony Ferguson is so good at creating scrambles and so good at utilizing his creative jiu-jitsu from the bottom. I think he will create multiple scrambles and force Kevin Lee to work to take him down over and over and over again. And Tony Ferguson's takedown defense is definitely no joke. I do see him stuffing a lot of takedowns early from Kevin Lee, but I also see Kevin Lee scoring a lot of takedowns. So I think it'll really tire out Kevin Lee, and Kevin Lee's never been 5 rounds. The guy has gone 3 rounds a couple times, and I've seen him start to fade around the end of round 2, early round 3. Maybe not fade, but at least slow down, and change his pace up. And Tony Ferguson has no problem going 5 hard rounds. We've seen him do it before. We'll see him do it again here. Like I said, Tony Ferguson has no problem with cardio. And while Kevin Lee did state in the Michael Chiesa fight he wanted the fight to go 5 rounds, and he wants this fight to go 5 rounds, I just the inexperience of even possibly going a full 5 rounds and seeing him tire out in rounds 2 and 3 in the past, I think that will catch up to him in this fight. I just think the constant forward pressure that Kevin Lee is going to put on Tony Ferguson in terms of landing those takedowns and getting them, and Ferguson hopping right back up, striking him, putting on a clinic on the feet, getting taken down. It's going to wear Kevin Lee out, and Tony Ferguson's going to be just fine creating scrambles and getting back up to his feet and constantly working Kevin Lee on the feet. And I think around round 3, that's when you're going to start to see Tony Ferguson really pick it up and really start to stuff takedowns. And I think he will put on a striking clinic in the 3rd round, probably hurt Kevin Lee later in the round. And if not the 3rd, maybe early 4th round, to see Tony Ferguson lighten Kevin Lee up on the feet. Kevin Lee goes for a desperation takedown, very tired. I see Tony Ferguson wrapping up a Darce and finishing him snap down city style.
Nice.
But I mean, honestly, I would not be surprised if Kevin Lee were to win this fight. And if Kevin Lee finishes this fight and wins the way he has been recently against the lower level of competition, if he does that to Tony Ferguson, my God, watch out. I mean, this guy's super impressive if that's the case. I mean, like I said, this guy's top dominant grappling game is fantastic. It's one of the best in the lightweight division, probably right behind Khabib Nurmagomedov. His ground and pound is lethal. The guy battered the hell out of Michael Chiesa before eventually locking up that rear naked choke. Controversial stoppage, yes, for sure. But, at the end of the day, Kevin Lee was dominating Michael Chiesa before that finish, or quote-unquote finish. But if Kevin Lee's able to do that to Tony Ferguson, I'll be super impressed. I mean, impressed beyond words can say, because Tony Ferguson's never been dominated like the way Kevin Lee has dominated his opponents. So I just see Tony Ferguson stuffing takedowns later in the fight and creating scrambles as he does get taken down early. And like I said, on the feet, while Kevin Lee's got a reach advantage, he might be able to utilize the jab, throw some kicks from the outside. And he does set up his takedowns very well. He's got a very explosive shot. I just think as the fight goes on and as Kevin Lee fails to finish Tony Ferguson because of his durability and because of his ability to create scrambles, and the longer this fight stays on the feet, the more it favors Ferguson. And as the fight goes on, I just don't see Kevin Lee's gas tank keeping up with Ferguson. So I'm going to go with that late. I'm going to go with the early 4th round submission victory for Tony Ferguson, Darce choke, to become the UFC Interim Lightweight Champion and hopefully get a shot at the notorious Conor McGregor, because like you said, that fight would be fantastic.
Yeah, and the Darce choke's a good call. That's one thing I didn't mention, was that especially if Kevin Lee goes to the double and sticks his neck out there, like, Tony Ferguson's front leg headlock series is nasty. Like, I don't think anybody has more Bravo choke submissions in the UFC than Tony Ferguson does. And it's for a good reason. Like, that's a skill that is very useful. Like, dudes don't train for that kind of front headlock series. You know, they'll defend like a guillotine, but you can go from a guillotine, transition that to a Darce, transition that to a Anaconda, transition that to a Bravo. Like, there's a lot of stuff that you're just not ready for, and Tony Ferguson has that kind of skill. So if he shoots one lazy takedown, that might be all it takes. Like, Ferguson has that advantage, and that's just another reason I feel more comfortable with him taking the fight.
100%. And yeah, so, I mean, like, if Kevin Lee's able to win this thing, like I said, I mean, it'll be, in the fashion that he's been doing it, it'll be super impressive. And it'll be, honestly, I will be very surprised, just because of how good Tony Ferguson is. I just think that, and with the experience he possesses and with the competition he's faced compared to Kevin Lee, and Kevin Lee's still very green in the sport. He's only 25 years old. So win or lose this fight, I think Kevin Lee's got a very bright future in the lightweight division. Definitely needs to critique his striking a little bit. Definitely needs to improve on that. But in terms of top game dominant grapplers, you know, Kevin Lee is up there with Khabib Nurmagomedov as one of the best grapplers in the lightweight division for sure. And like I said, the winner of this fight, either way, you're going to give Conor issues if they do actually fight.
Which is probably a good reason why Conor won't actually agree to fight them.
I agree. Unless, like I said, unless there's just so much buzz and so much demand from fans, which there hasn't been yet. And even with an interim title crown, there really still hasn't been that, that demand for this fight. More people are demanding the Nate Diaz trilogy than anything else. Conor's actually talked about possibly facing Max Holloway at 155, and has actually praised Max Holloway recently, which is, it's cool to see. And honestly, if I'm talking about any fight I want to see between Conor McGregor and anyone in the UFC, aside from maybe the Tony Ferguson fight, it's Max Holloway. That fight would be crazy.
Yeah,
I would love to see that rematch.
He has a lot of options. I mean, he could very well never fight again, which, if I was a betting man, honestly, that might be the long shot that I might take, because you make that kind of money in a combat sport where your career is just naturally limited. You know, you might want to go out when you're as on top financially as you're going to ever get. He's got a growing family. He can, he's got a growing business if he wants to promote fights. He's mentioned that in the past. He's got, he's flirted with the idea of like fighting GSP or like Tyron Woodley. Obviously, he's got the lightweight title potentially if he wants to defend that. He's got, there's plenty of lightweights you can fight that are all interesting matchups. You have, obviously, Max Holloway, maybe a Jose Aldo rematch at some point. I mean, it doesn't do a whole lot for Conor, but for the grand MMA landscape, it would be interesting.
That's one of the fights I've always wanted to see again, was the Jose Aldo rematch, because I just felt like we got robbed of an actual fight.
I mean, I don't think Conor would ever take that, just because he has nothing really to gain.
Unless once again there's a demand for it, and Jose just lost to Max Holloway. If Jose beat Max Holloway, right, in like the same type of fashion that Max beat him, then yeah, you could definitely make an argument for that fight. But at this point, unless Aldo's able to turn around, I think he's fighting Ricardo Lamas next, which is
I don't understand
frustrating matchmating. They should have made the Cub Swanson fight.
Like,
either go to lightweight or make the Cubs
of matchups.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand the Ricardo Lamas fight. I mean, and Aldo's been actually training with Mikey Garcia, so I mean, he's been trying to improve his boxing, which is cool to see, and hopefully he improves his cardio at the same time, because that's what needs the most work. But,
well, I think the weight cut, like, it plays a big factor, which is why I'm more interested in him fighting a lightweight. Like, and there's so many more interesting, fresh matchups, you know.
100%.
Like, can you imagine Aldo versus like the winner of Alvarez Gaethje or something?
Oh my God, that would be insane. Jeez. Or even like Aldo Barboza, or God, like even like the fight we've always been, you know, hoping for ever since Aldo and this guy was champ. You know, Aldo and Pettis.
Right.
You know, I would love to see that fight.
I'd even get excited for like Aldo Will Brooks, like
yeah, anything
new and fresh and interesting.
And even like I think Michael Johnson's moving to featherweight, so I mean even like a Aldo Michael Johnson fight would be fun to watch. I mean, there's so
Aldo
many.
Nate Diaz, like
yeah, jeez. I mean, like there's so many fun fights for Aldo at 155, and then he's got, you know, a lot more of a chance of actually claiming that Conor rematch if he's able to grab some wins against some top 155ers. I mean,
sure.
you've seen, you know, these guys who are cutting so much weight and then they move up in weight and just feel so much better because they don't have to cut as much weight. Robert Whitaker's one of them. Dos Anjos, Donald Cerrone. I mean, basically we had the same guys in our head, but I can't think of anybody else off the top. I mean,
it's becoming more prevalent, like more so now.
Yeah.
I think like the day of just dropping a weight class to solve your problems is kind of past, I hope.
I mean, we saw that with Anthony Pettis when he dropped to 145.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it a bunch of times. Neymar Core, I mean, he had initial success at welterweight, but I think that honestly like ruined his career, that weight cut. Because as soon as that happened, all of a sudden he started getting knocked out.
Yep.
I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence.
No.
Somebody like Mike Swick, like he had a little bit of success at welterweight early, but you know, you do that weight cut enough times, like I said,
another
aging.
Yeah, another one too that I forgot to think of is Jorge Masvidal, and he jumped up to 170, and he's been finding a lot more success there.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So, I mean, I would really love to see Aldo hop up to 155, like you said. I mean, there's so many more refreshing matchups there. But yeah, so back on the topic of 116, that's basically it for us. We've talked for a very long time, and it's been a lot of fun, Tim. It's been great doing this. We're going to try to do this at least once a week, or we're going to try to do this once a week from here on out. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the content. This is a YouTube cast, so basically, if you're enjoying this, comment below. Let us know what your thoughts are on this card. Who do you think's going to win between the main event, flyweight title? Who do you think's going to win? What do you think about the heavyweight division? Everything we've discussed, let us know your thoughts on. And we're excited to see your opinions. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. We would greatly appreciate that. It would help our channel out tremendously. If you enjoy this piece of content, once again, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell next to it, and you will get, content from us at least once a week. Fun podcasts like this where we're just shooting the shit and breaking down fights, and all of a sudden we'll go on a rant about the heavyweight division, and all of a sudden we'll go on a different rant about Conor McGregor, or they will start talking about Anderson Silva and GSP out of nowhere. So, it was a lot of fun. Or we can talk some Kimbo Slice Dada 5000 too. It was a lot of fun, Tim. I really appreciate you coming on with me. Do you have anything to say to the fine folks who have listened to Pure Fight Radio today?
Thank you for listening, everyone. Hopefully we can iron out the technological issues. Scheduling, like we said, want to get some consistent content for you guys, and make the show a little tighter, and maybe not go in as many different tangents. Although they were very fun, and I think you guys will enjoy them if you have a little patience, which is lacking nowadays.
It is lacking.
Check me out at TKO Talks on Twitter. I'm sure I'll be shooting off some tweets on fight night, and keep it locked on there as well, because I got some new project I'm working on. Hopefully I can announce soon. I've been working on it kind of on the low, non-MMA related, but I think some of you will enjoy it. So at TKO Talks, check it out. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back very shortly.
Fantastic.
your turn to plug stuff.
All right, so I'm going to plug my YouTube channel, which is actually going through a little revamp right now. I went through, if you guys have paid any attention to anything in regards to what I do on YouTube, I'm the owner of BTC MMA Media, which is my channel on YouTube, but going through a little revamp. I wanted to change up some things, and I wanted to get more on a consistent schedule, and I would like to release content for that YouTube channel at least once a week as well. And my UFC, by the time you hear this, my UFC 116 preview will be on my channel, and you can actually now find me. It will be Brent Cristelli MMA, so that's where you can find me on YouTube. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button on that channel as well. That's where you can find me on YouTube. I have a Facebook page you can like, going to be called Brent Cristelli MMA. You can also follow me on Instagram at Brent Cristelli MMA. And last but not least, I am on Twitter at Brent_Cristelli, and I tweet very often about the fights and about my opinions on stuff, so I'll be tweeting quite a bit on Fight Night as well, along with Tim. And yeah, like I said, we're going to bring content to you, hopefully at least once a week. If not, we're at least going to let you know. Follow us on Twitter for those updates. Subscribe to this YouTube channel and click that notification bell to receive content once a week and consistent content. So I'm very excited to get this thing going, hopefully on a consistent basis. As I'm a little under the weather, so looking to get back on it and get back in the routine of consistent content. And hopefully you guys will consume it and enjoy it, and hopefully you hardcore MMA fans will enjoy this and appreciate this as much as we hope you think you will. So yeah, anything else to say, Tim, before we hit the road at 2 hours almost?
Yeah, right. Who would have thought that a show with me on it would have went over? That was Vegas's favorite going in.
That was Vegas's favorite.
Thanks for having me on, and look forward to keep doing this and tighten it up as we go.
100%. We will definitely tighten it up moving forward, so you don't have to sit in the car and listen to us for 2 hours straight, or separate your car rides in our podcast.
I was gonna say, yeah, just listen to half one day and half the other.
Yeah, it's like a Joe.
Stuff's too long.
It's like a Joe Rogan podcast. Those things last like 3 hours.
Yeah, or the Leps fan, like 6 hours. You gotta listen to it in little chunks.
Yeah, it is.
Got a whole week before the next one. You can break it up. You got 3 days till fight night. Listen to it all day leading up, and you can make Saturday a full day of UFC fun.
See, there's multiple different methods of consuming our content, so you're welcome for letting you know. But yeah, that's gonna do it for us. That's gonna do it for Pure Fight Radio. Until next time, guys, we will catch you in the next podcast, and until then, I hope you enjoy UFC 216. If you're considering buying it, go ahead and just buy it. I probably won't buy it, but that's just me. I'm probably going to just watch it at a local B-dubs or a local bar. I'm probably not going to stream it, though. I would like to at least watch his fights in high quality. But yeah, I mean, definitely find a way to watch it, even if you have to stream it.
Someone will be periscoping it on Twitter. Just
do that. Like you're bootlegging it or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely find a way to watch this card. If you're a true fan of mixed martial arts, you will appreciate this card and this content. Yeah, so that's going to do it for Pure Fight Radio for our UFC 216 preview and many other ramblings and rants. And we are signing off right now, and we cannot wait to talk to you guys next week.
Peace out.